Hi, welcome back to the section of MapReduce. In this section, we'll be looking at how to develop a MapReduce code, to find out the maximum temperature out of a great number of readings for a particular year. Okay, it finds out a maximum temperature for a particular year out of a group of values recorded for that particular year. Let's look at a sample data set here. So my sample data set would look like this. I have different temperatures for different years. So my MapReduce application will go through each and every temperature of every particular year and finds out the maximum temperature of each year. For example, if you could see here, 2014 has two recordings, 44 and 38. So our application is to find out 44 as the maximum temperature recorded for 2014. Similarly, if it has to find out for 2013, it has to find out again 44 as the maximum temperature of 2013. So, assume a situation where you are getting or recording the temperatures for every 1 hour. And down the lane, after 5 years, you wanted to find the maximum temperature of each particular year for the past 5 years. So, in order to find out that manually or using some other application, it would be very tedious, because when you are recording every 1 hour temperature, you will have a lot of readings. When you got to evaluate that, it will take a lot of time. So that's why we are writing one MapReduce application to find a maximum temperature for a particular year when there are recordings for many number of years. Okay, so in that case, let's see how does a mapper code look like. Yeah, so my mapper code is something like this. We have given some preprocessor directive, user bin Python. Yeah, this is to ensure that your your code is going and executed over here, user bin Python, because Python is installed over there. And I am importing something called sys, which is an inbuilt Python module in order to read the lines in standard input. Now, my for loop, which reads line one by one and removes the leading and trailing spaces and segregates your year and temperature using something like this. Val of 0 to 4 will give me my temperature, and val of 5 to 9 will give me my temperature. Sorry, val of 0 to 4 will give me my year, and val of 5 to 9 will give me my temperature. And finally, I would print year and temperature with a tab delimited. I've just included one if condition here in order to eliminate the temperatures with something like 9999, which won't exist. I mean, you can add any sort of filtering in order to filter out whichever temperatures you don't want. Yeah. So let's test our mapper code. Okay. In order to test our mapper code, let's write something like this: cat temperature.data.txt and python sentimapper.py. When I give an enter, it gives me the temperatures and the respective values with a tab delimiter between them. Okay, if I had to do something like local testing, I can give a sort before sending into Python reducer, because after mapper, as we know that in MapReduce architecture, a default sorting will be occurring. So as I'm doing my local testing, I got to provide sort explicitly. Yeah. So let's look at how does a reducer code look like. This is my reducer code. So in this reducer code, again, like I did in my mapper code, I am using some preprocessor directive and importing something called sys. And then I'm using something called last key and maximum value, two variables. I'm initializing them with none, 0. And I have my if for loop, which takes each line one by one, and then it will strip the spaces and splits it based on tab delimiter, so that I get my key and value. Right? So we have seen that we are getting something like 2010 44, 2010 45. Okay, one by one it will go as an input to SentiReducer. So let's assume that 2010 44 has come here. So my key will be 2010 and 44 would be my value. So in this if loop, it would check if last key is defined, but it's not defined. This is my first iteration, right? So it will go to else loop. Simply it will go to else loop. In else loop, what it takes is, it will take key as 2010 and max of max value, float of value. So max of val would be 0, which I had initialized, and float of val is 44. So my value, max value from here on would be 44, and last key would be 2010, right? So in my second iteration, if I'm getting something like 46, so if I got 42 in my first iteration, my last key would be 2010 and 42, right? In my second iteration, if I'm getting 2010 comma 44, what happens is, okay, it comes to this if loop. It will check if last key is defined. Of course, last key is defined. Last key is nothing but your 2010, and your last key is equal to key? No, because last key and key are same. Last key is 2010, and now your key is also 2010. So it again comes to else loop. Okay. So what happens is, in else loop again it takes the max of value comma float of value. So which is my again 2010 44 will be my key, 2010 will be my key, and max of 42 comma 44 it will take, and which is 44 would be the maximum value, and it will be allocated to this particular variable. And finally it will print last key and maximum value, which is 2010 and 44. Likewise, this particular if loop will iterate for each and every value of particular year and gives us the maximum temperature. Let's execute the reducer code and see. Python SentiReducer.py. So when I give this, I'll get the maximum temperature for 2010, which is 45, and again maximum temperature for 2011, which is 42, and again for every respective year we'll get the maximum temperature, right? Here I have done a local testing in order to find out the maximum temperature, and in order to check if my mapper and reducer code are working fine. So let's execute this using MapReduce and see that your codes are working fine and how your output is arriving. So I'll take this temperature.data.txt and I'll put it into HDFS path, which is user training HDFS path. So after putting that, I'll execute my MapReduce code using streaming jar and passing my mapper code as well as my reducer code. So let's execute this. When I execute this, it will take input as temperature data.txt and it will give the output in this particular path in user training. So let's see how an output will be arrived. My mapper is done. Reducer will be starting now, and once reducer is 100%, we'll be getting the output. Yes, reducer is 100%. Yeah, code is done. Let's look at our output in this particular path. So in this particular path, we'll have an part00 file which will have the actual output. So it would be same like how we got our local testing output. See, here we have something called 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013 and 2014 and the respective maximum temperatures. So the point to note over here is we have not provided any sorting. Sorting had happened automatically, right? So because Hadoop architecture takes care of sorting and shuffling phase, so we don't need to provide explicit coding for that. So this is how you write your applications in Python in order to find out any maximum temperatures or customer sentiment analysis. Whatever you want to do, you can do it in Python as well. That's it for this particular session. Thanks a lot for watching this video. Bye bye.